Okay, so let me see, where did we stop? Um, I think I covered pretty much everything except for the cortex, right? So I talked, I was kind of like going from the bottom to the top, right? So let me review, what did we talk about? Um, so first of all, the major parts of the brain are the brainstem, the cerebellum, the pancephalon, and cerebrum. Again, to remind you, in the brain, the gray matter is on the surface, outside, and white matter or connections are inside. So pretty much like every structure has a combination of gray matter and white matter throughout the brain. But two structures where neurons form layers are actually cerebrum and cerebellum. These layers of neuronal cells form something called cortex. Cortex means bark, right? So it's like the outer layer of gray matter. So brainstem. Brainstem is right above the spinal cord and has three parts: medulla oblongata, pons, which means bridge, and their midbrain. As I explained, brainstem is area where a lot of connections go through, connections that go down, go up. That's a part that is control of vital functions. And this is also center for 10 out of 12 cranial nerves. So nuclei mean like neurons that in charge of function of cranial nerves. 10 of them are located within the brainstem. I also mentioned that along the brainstem, there is a structure called reticular formation. It's a network of neurons that controls levels of alertness and consciousness. Also generates patterns for sleep and for being awake. Between the brainstem and the cerebellum, there is a fourth ventricle. So you can see this is the fourth ventricle. And above this, there is a structure called cerebral aqueduct that connects third ventricle with the fourth. Also, to remind you, below fourth ventricle down, there are two apertures, openings, where the CSF, cerebrospinal fluid, can continue either down into central canal of spinal cord or into subarachnoid space between the arachnoid and pia mater, the brain meninges. And subarachnoid space, it's pretty much all over the brain and spinal cord. Okay, so cerebellum, I told you, in charge of balance, coordination, motor learning, and also works along with their cerebrum in execution of motor functions. Then above there's brainstem, there's area called diencephalon, kind of like a core of the brain. And diencephalon includes thalamus, hypothalamus, epithalamus. Hypothalamus, I told you, is in charge of endocrine function and also, remember, basic instincts, right? Feeding, drinking, protection, temperature regulation, and reproduction. Okay, so everything within their hypothalamus plus also biological clock. Thalamus is like a relay station where the information flows to cortex from cortex. It coordinates incoming sensory information that goes from spinal cord, also from cranial nerves, right? So incoming sensory information, synapses stops at the thalamus and from there is projected to corresponding area of the cortex. It also coordinates information flow between cerebellum and cortex, between basal ganglia and cortex as well. I also mentioned basal ganglia that is involved in like fine motor tuning, and also like body language. I told you it's like expression of emotions on the face. And I told you that basal ganglia, damage to basal ganglia results in condition called Parkinson disease. Okay. Any questions? Are we good? Talk to me. Great. So that was basal nuclei. So basically, I think I should talk about the cortex, cerebral cortex, and then about the cranial nerves. Sorry. Okay. So cortex, which is on top of two cerebral hemispheres. Surface area is huge. Okay. And if you just spread it flat, it's gonna look like our pillow, like pillowcase. Nobody wants to carry anything as that big on the shoulders. So it was packed tightly into, I should say, a relatively small box, which is our cranium, right? The folds that result of this packing are called convolutions, and divided into their sulci are grooves, and gyri ridges. So you can see sulcus, one sulcus, many sulci, and gyrus, one gyrus, many gyri. Okay, so sulci and gyri. Everyone has a unique pattern, like your fingerprints, unique to you. The pattern of sulci and gyri are quite different from one brain to another, but some of them, the big ones, actually quite preserved from brain to brain. Sulci and gyri, and also bones of the cranium, give names to what called the lobes. Lobes of the brain, again, pretty much they go along with their cranial bones. So the front one is called frontal lobe, right here, frontal lobe. Behind is parietal. Now pay attention, between frontal and parietal, there is a quite large groove called central sulcus. This is central sulcus, okay? Separates frontal from parietal. Between frontal, parietal, and temporal, there is a lateral sulcus. That's even deeper sulcus than the central one. Then between parietal and occipital, there is a parieto-occipital sulcus. Okay, so they're kind of like landmarks. There's also transverse cerebral fissure, which separates occipital lobe from the cerebellum as well. Also, I want you to pay attention. Central sulcus in the front is precentral gyrus, and behind is postcentral gyrus. They're quite important. I'm going to explain you in a second why they're important. Okay, so this is like another view. This is called longitudinal fissure that separates two hemispheres. It runs deep between two hemispheres. This is central sulcus between pink and blue, and precentral gyrus, postcentral gyrus, frontal lobe, parietal lobe, occipital lobe. There's another view. This you can also see remnants of dura, by the way. Okay. Okay. Now there is an area actually that is hidden. I don't think you can see it here. So the region that is hidden is called insula. Let me show you. Actually. So you see, I'm sorry, I don't know what's happening with my voice today. So you see, this is like lateral sulcus, right? This is frontal lobe, this is temporal lobe. So now, like if you just spread them, there is an additional layer of gray matter called insula. Sometimes it's called the fifth lobe of the brain. Insula is involved in, I should say, many, I shouldn't say like cognitive aspects, but it's pretty much involved in, how to say, emotional learning. So if, for example, you ate something that you really, really wanted and got food poisoning, next time insula will tell you, stay away from that. It's pretty much like, again, compares experience from your past with potential experience in the future. I can put this way, right? So if something like, any negativity from the past can affect your choices, the choices that you make in the present, pretty much thanks to insula. Also, insula has something called mirror neurons. What are mirror neurons? It's not only in the insula, they're also in some other places in the brain. Mirror neurons help you to project behavior, emotional state of another person to yourself. Okay, we use mirror neurons quite often. For example, during learning process, whenever you hear "do like me," so you try to copy another person, right? So you mirror the actions. Like for example, do you like girls? I think I have only girls here. Did you ever take like, I don't know, Zumba classes or yoga? Yeah. So when you see the Zumba instructor, for example, what do? You just move. Try to move the same way that instructor moves, right? So what do? You use mirror neurons. You don't really consciously process every single move. Yeah. So when you see, for example, emotions expressed on somebody's face, and you kind of like feel for another person, right? Yep. So you use insula pretty much. Again, it's not the only place in the brain that has them, right? But this is one of them. Any questions? Talk to me. Okay. Now I'm gonna go over the lobes of the brain, and then I'm gonna write them for you as well on the whiteboard. So lobes have like, how to say, each lobe has a function that it's associated with the most, okay? It doesn't mean that it's a complete division of the function between the brain areas. No, quite, I mean, say like brain requires all lobes working together pretty much for every single function. But as I said, there are functions associated the most. And I'll start with occipital lobe because it's the easier one. And I also want to explain to you, there are sensory areas that process sensory information. There are motor areas that process motor information. And there's something called association areas. Association areas are pretty much for integration of the information, of relation of this information to your memories of your experience. So association areas are those that will tell you what you look at, okay? And they will tell you how you feel about that. Or does it like reminds you something, right? So I should say like high functions of the brain, of cerebrum, that's definitely association areas. Is it clear? I want to see reactions from you. Reaction that you with me and you listen to me. That's it? Only half of you listen to me? I can live with that. So let's start with occipital lobe. Occipital lobe has something called primary visual cortex. So information from the eyes goes to this area. So you see this is primary visual cortex. And you see large one, visual association area. So as I said, this is the one that tells you what you look at, right? It processes information like shape, color, motion, distance, and whatever it is, right? So association area. And then we have parietal lobe. So parietal lobe has this area. This is called primary somatosensory cortex. Primary somatosensory cortex is the one that receives sensory information from your body. Okay, I mean, touch, pressure, temperature, pain, stretch, vibration, certain extent body position. So everything streams to primary somatosensory cortex. Now, you have somatosensory association cortex, as I said, the one that gives interpretation to your feeling. It also has area that pretty much in charge of assessing assessment of their like sizes, I should say. So for example, I think a good example is, let's say you see jeans, right? Can you tell if you can fit into the jeans or not? Can you usually do so? No, talk to me. Yes, please. Tell me, if you pick up jeans, can you tell if you're gonna fit into them or not?
No.
No? Really? I don't know, like for example, if I go to a store and I look at the sizes, so I know, for example, small is not for me, right? Extra small is not for me. Medium.
Sometimes it look good, but when you wear it, it's like tied up.
Yes, but I mean, I say like approximately, right? Approximately, you can tell. Yeah. So, for example, if there is a, like, you have to imagine you have to get through their, like, let's say, very, very narrow opening. You have to move from one place to another. So, you can estimate approximately if you'll be able to squeeze yourself through, right? So that's the parietal cortex. Parietal cortex keeps kind of like track of your body size, right? Versus whatever's around you. Okay. So this is the one that tells you, for example, if you are like walking on the street and there is a, I don't know, like there's a place, let's say there's a Starbucks that you want to go into. How far is Starbucks away from you? What direction you should go, right? Um, I don't know. It's not really like a GPS. No, it's not. It's actually position of your body versus the environment. Okay, so that's parietal lobe. I mentioned insula. Insula along with parietal lobe also in charge of gustatory sense of taste, process sense of taste. Right? It's parietal. It's not temporal. So temporal area, primary auditory cortex. Information from the ears comes here. It's not a big area, so you can see primary auditory cortex. Again, association area is larger, and it includes something called Wernicke's area. Wernicke's area is speech comprehension. Okay, so it's not just understanding of sounds. Sounds is one thing, right? Speech comprehension is another. Why speech comprehension is different? Tell me. Why speech comprehension is different from processing sound. Talk to me. Why, for example, speech comprehension is different from listening to music? Yes, please. Okay, Jinky, can you answer this question?
Is it because words content?
Because you have to know the language, right? If you know the language, the words make sense to you, right? And if you don't know the language, it's just sound. Make sense? So Wernicke's area you have to develop, it's really based on the languages that you know. Okay. Okay, and the last one. Frontal cortex. This is a very large one, and I should say quite has a bunch of things about it. So motor area, primary motor cortex. Primary motor cortex neurons that send signal down spinal cord, and from spinal cord signal goes through spinal nerves to your muscles. So this is the one that makes, basically pushes the button to execute the movement. There is a premotor cortex. Premotor cortex is the one that plans the movement, right? This one presses button, says, okay, go. But this is the one that coordinates all sorts of information before you move, right? Close connection between this somatosensory cortex and premotor cortex, because you can move without feedback from your sensory organs, right? If you disconnect all senses, you won't be able to take a step. Okay, you need sensory information in order to plan and execute movements. There is an area called Broca's area. Broca's area, this one is speech generation area. And interestingly, you have it only on your left side, right? Broca's area is within the left frontal lobe. You don't have it on the right. Very, very rare exceptions. Speech generation. Speech is a motor function, right? So you have to coordinate a lot of things, a lot of muscles in order to talk, okay? And basically prefrontal cortex. You see, prefrontal cortex is right here. This is the area. This is your top cognitive, I don't know, center. So you can see working memory, executive area for task management, working memory for object recall tasks, solving complex multitask problems. So this is, again, this is the one that you develop through learning, through experience. This is your, I should say, this is the one that tells you what's gonna happen, right? Like kind of like a foresight. Not talking about like telling the future. No, this is the one that will tell you if you say this, that might happen. If you do that, that might happen, right? So kind of like, yeah, intelligence seed. Any questions before I'm gonna put everything in writing? Any questions here, guys? Is it a lot?
Professor.
Yes.
What about identical twins? Is it different?
I should say they share a lot, absolutely, but there's still some room to difference still. You know, I believe everyone's person brain is unique. And even like, you know, two people who share the same genetic material, they slightly different experience, still slightly different, that can be reflected on the brains. I think less than, for example, fraternal twins, probably, but still. Okay, so let me start again. Occipital, motor areas. Motor areas, sensory, association, processing. Okay, and I'll start with the occipital lobe. So occipital lobe is associated with vision. Okay, so which means you have primary occipital, primary visual cortex, and association. So primary and association. Association sometimes called secondary, sometimes. This is the one that you see with. Okay, eyes just send signals to your occipital lobe. So if, for example, if eyes don't see, right, the person goes blind, you can retain something like called inner vision. Yeah. So inner vision is like when you close your eyes and you can imagine, like you can see objects, right? Yes, that's the inner vision. Don't talk to me, like say yes, no, whatever. Come on, yeah, yes. Now, any injury to occipital lobe, the person loses concept. What does it mean to see? Okay, there's no such a thing, vision, not anymore, right? People don't understand what does it mean to see. Okay. So parietal. Parietal is primary somatosensory. This is the post central gyrus. Primary. Post central gyrus, and we have gustatory taste. And we have body environment, body environment assessment. And also in parietal lobe, you have area that is responsible for facial recognition. Okay, so there is a special area that learns how to tell people apart by looking the faces. Yeah. So face recognition area. Then we have temporal. Temporal is primary in association, auditory cortex, Wernicke's area, which is speech recognition. It's also actually in emotions. It's also memory. And I forgot to mention, in temporal lobe, you have something like, there's a structure called hippocampus. Hippocampus is in charge, for example, of taking short-term memory into long-term. If you ever learned, you probably learned in a psychology class. Did you take psychology, guys? Can you show me if you took psychology? Only two of you? Yeah, in psychology, you probably learned about short-term, long-term memory. So this is the area that is pretty much associated with this function. the hippocampus. Plus, hippocampus is like your natural GPS. It holds like maps. It holds maps and it takes you to places, right? So quite often if you go like in a familiar area, you don't really have to think which way to go, right? You just go. Yes? Yes? Mm-hmm. So I should say emotion. Oops, I messed up here. Okay, can I fix it? Like emotions, I misspelled it. Emotions, memory, hippocampus. Hippocampus means like seahorse. It kind of looks like a seahorse. And hippocampus is like natural GPS. Then we have frontal. So frontal, as I told you, the most complex. So motor cortex. In motor cortex, that's precentral gyrus. Premotor. Premotor is planning of movement. Then Broca's area. Broca's area is speech generation. And I should add prefrontal cortex. In prefrontal cortex, that's, I put like two words, intelligence and personality. Okay. So this is, as I said, like top moral and cognitive and like yeah, it's something that you probably, this is, by the way, this is the area that believed to be developed the last, which makes a lot of sense. And there was a lot of research that showed that it doesn't really develop until age 20, like early 20s. So that's probably one of the reasons why you shouldn't buy alcohol before you're 21. I'm not sure, like, if it's really related, but yep. I mean, after this age, people are supposed to kind of like be more, I shouldn't say smart, but maybe more responsible for their actions, right, than before. Make sense? No? Okay. Any questions here? No questions. Now, can I go to PowerPoint? Oh, you need time. Okay. So last thing about the cortex, I should say like here. First of all, I forgot to tell you that in like the actually organization of connections between brain and body is contralateral. You remember what is contralateral? What the word contralateral means? Can anybody tell me what contralateral means? Guys, if you don't know, just say don't know, don't remember, and say something. Maishi, tell me, do you know what means contralateral?
It's side by opposite.
you. I appreciate a lot. Thank you, Mahesh. Exactly. So, for example, like motor control, the right side controls the left side of the body, right? So, if, for example, right-handed, your right hand actually is controlled by the left motor cortex, okay? And vice versa. Sensory information also goes to the opposite side of the brain, right? So this is contralateral organization, opposite. That's why, for example, a person has stroke in the left side of the brain, left motor cortex, is going to affect cause paralysis on the right side of the body. Yeah. Okay, so that's contralateral organization between body and brain. But there's something else, something called laterality. Laterality means uneven distribution of function. So the right and left hemispheres are not exactly the same. There's some structural difference and there's some functional difference. So I already mentioned to you that Broca's area is on the left side, right? Broca's area is speech generation. So actually most of the functions related to speech are within the left side. Functions related to emotions more on the right. So for example, if you talk, right, the words generated by the left, but the emotions to your speech are added by the right hemisphere. So left is about math, it's about logic, it's about words. And if this is the one that detail oriented. For example, you spell with the left. The left will allow you to see individual letters in the word. Right integrates. So right will see the whole entire word. Right will see the picture, while left can see their, for example, if you look at the picture created by puzzle, the left will see individual pieces, right will see the whole entire picture. Okay, what else? Right is more creative. So it's really into music. It's really into art, colors, pictures. The left is more about logic. The left is more about how to say, which one would you need for school? Tell me, right or left?
Right.
Right.
For school?
First. Sorry. No, left.
No, left.
So you're
here.
Yes, left. You need left for school. You need math. You need language, right? It's also about following the rules. The left is about following the
But for
rules.
that, we need the right side also, so we can see the screen.
Nowadays. But I should say, yeah, right is the one that adds creativity to your brain, while left is more about like, you know,
To hear and understand.
yeah. It said, for example, that kids, when they go to kindergarten, 30% of kids are creative. By the end of school, high school, this number goes down to 3. And quite often, kids, like creative kids, don't really fit into school. They drop out quite often. You can see like a lot of musicians, like especially, I don't know, artists and rock musicians, they all dropped out from school because school really pushes you to use your left hemisphere more than right. Yeah. Makes sense?
Yep.
Okay, so I guess no questions, otherwise you ask me. So the last part, cranial nerves. Then we'll watch the video on ship dissection. So I really want something better than this for cranial nerves.
I just have one question. You just said something about the stroke. So I have one question about it. I know that sometimes when the stroke happens and, for example, the brain gets damaged, and sometimes there is the moments when brain can, how to say, kind of alive its cells back, so can get back to normal. So in what cases happens these issues? Because sometimes it cannot get back to normal, but sometimes it happens.
It of course depends on how serious was the damage, right? So stroke usually caused by blockage of their blood circulation. So let's say thrombus, blood clot, blocked blood vessel, or a rupture of aneurysm, right? Aneurysm is when blood vessel kind of like stretched and ruptured. So depending on the size of the damage, this is one thing. Depends how fast was the treatment, right? Because if the blood vessel is blocked, there is a medication that actually can help to unclog the blood vessel. So the faster you do it, the less damage, right? But brain has a huge ability, I mean, to compensate. But it really depends also on your age. It depends on how to say. Have you seen the? It's not about stroke, but have you seen the movie Still Alice?
Which one?
Still Alice.
No.
Watch the movie Still Alice. It's actually about a woman. She was a professor at Harvard University. She had Alzheimer. Like Alzheimer, that is like form that genetic, which means it hits very early. Like she was 50 when she started to get the first symptoms, right? And I didn't watch the movie actually. I know it's a great movie, but I read the book. I really like that. And I just remember from the book when the doctor said her progress, like, I mean, she eventually her brain will be destroyed by Alzheimer, but its development really slowed down because she was very intelligent. So I should say, the more you develop your brain, the more resistance it will actually have towards things that can destroy it, like stroke or Alzheimer. But again, it's the prognosis really depends first of all on area where it happened and how big was the damage.
Okay.
But yeah, there's like a rehabilitation that can help a lot. Okay, so guys,
thank you.
Cranial nerves. I'm gonna go by this picture, but you have a summary of each one of them. So remember, I told you that 10 out of 12 cranial nerves associated with the brainstem. So you see this yellowish stumps, right? Yellowish, all of them. This is brainstem, right? So you can see here's the midbrain. This is pons. Between pons and medulla, this is medulla. So the first two, they are like they're not associated with the brainstem. Cranial nerves go by Roman numbers, right? Not by Arabic, but by Roman. And when you talk about cranial nerves, they can be pure sensory, which means that they deal only with sensory information. They can be pure motor, only movement. They can be mixed sensory and motor. They also can have parasympathetic component. We didn't talk much about autonomic nervous system. I think I mentioned sympathetic, parasympathetic, but well, you can see description, for example, and I'll mention this one. In description, it says that it has parasympathetic fibers that do certain things related to physiology rather than to sensation or movement. Okay. So let me start with the first one. First one is the largest one. You can see it. It's olfactory nerve. Olfactory nerve, pure sensory, takes information from the nose, right? So this sensory information from the nose goes to olfactory cortex. Olfactory cortex actually is in temporal lobe. Okay. So this is the big one, olfactory. Then number 2, optic. Optic is pure sensory as well. Pure sensory takes information from the eyes. So right eye, left eye, then the fibers cross. So they cross, this is called optic chiasm. A chiasm is like letter X, is where fibers cross. And that's why basically whatever you see on the right goes to the left, whatever you see on the left goes to the right, then you have common visual field as well, okay? So one more time, number 1, number 2, pure sensory, sense of smell and vision. Then you have 3 cranial nerves, number 3, oculomotor, number 4, trochlear, and number 6, abducens, that control your eye movement. In each eye, you have 6 short muscles. These muscles move your eyeballs, right? So you can look up, down, from side to side, right? Most of the time, your eyes move on their own, right? You don't really have to control the movement. So 3 cranial nerves operate 6 muscles in each eye. Okay, now oculomotor, as I said, you can see the names. These are the names of the muscles. If we'll have a chance and talk about their senses this semester, I'm not sure like how everything progresses, but this is the names of the muscles, like inferior oblique, superior, inferior, medial rectus. Okay, don't really worry about the names. This is the names of the muscles. But oculomotor also controls the eyelids. And it actually helps to control the size of the pupil in the eye. And also something called accommodation. Accommodation reflex, that's when your eyes look at something that is close versus something that is far, right? So they have to change something called the shape of the lens in the eye so you can see close. Okay, like generally speaking, number 3, 4 out of 6 muscles that control the eye movement, pupil size, and accommodation reflex. And I said number, I'll have it again here. Okay, sorry. Number 4, this is another muscle, eye muscle, superior oblique, okay. And number 6, abducens, is lateral rectus. This is another eye muscle. So one more time, 3, 4, 6, control eye movement. So we go back to 5. 5 is trigeminal nerve. This is the stump of trigeminal. This is the trochlear, by the way. This is abducens, trochlear abducens, trigeminal. This is a big nerve. It's a big nerve, and trigeminal means 3. It has 3 sensory branches that pick up sensory information from your face. They're branch from your forehead, then like from your upper jaw and lower jaw. 3 sensory branches. On top of this, it also controls muscles of chewing. Remember, masseter temporalis? So they are controlled by trigeminal nerve. Number 7. Number 7 is facial nerve. Facial is a large nerve as well. So this is the facial nerve here. Facial nerve controls muscles of facial expressions. And facial nerve also does interesting thing. It, for example, controls your salivary glands, the large salivary glands. Glands produce tears, lacrimal glands, and also takes information from the front of the tongue. So it's a mixed nerve, motor for muscles of facial expression, sensory information from the tongue, parasympathetic, salivary glands. Then we have number 8, it's called vestibular cochlear. This is our vestibular cochlear next to vestibular cochlear takes information from the ear. So inner ear is in charge of hearing and balance. So it takes information from there, right? Like 2 branches, one from there, one for hearing and one for balance. This is number 8. Number 9 is called glossopharyngeal nerve. Glossopharyngeal nerve is mixed nerve, so it's actually muscles of the throat, right? It also controls salivary glands, but not the parotid, submandibular and sublingual. Sensory information, as I said, from the throat as well. And it also takes information from the back of the tongue. Okay, facial from the front, glossopharyngeal from the back. Then we have vagus nerve. Vagus nerve, this is the most interesting nerve because the rest of the nerves are within their head, okay? Vagus, big one, from medulla, leaves the brain. I mean, it's also controls certain functions of the head, but it actually leaves their head and goes all the way down to your internal organs. It stops, it stops actually at intestine. This is the major parasympathetic nerve. So whenever we talk about rest and digest, this is the one that promotes this function within your body. So vagus controls your heart, it slows it down, it slows down your respiration, it stimulates your digestion. So how to say, I should say most of your physiology at any given moment is run by vagus nerve. Okay. But it's, by the way, it also takes information from your ear. So if you have an earache, ear infection, and you feel the pain, this is the one that picks up information about the pain from your ear. We have the last 2, accessory. And accessory is motor. But interestingly, it's also part of, it's within their, let me just show you, accessory nerve 11, right? Accessory is within the medulla, but it also has additional nucleus lower, within the spinal nerves as well. This is the one that controls muscles of your neck, like sternocleidomastoid and trapezius. And the last one is hypoglossal. Hypoglossal is actually muscle that nerve that controls your tongue. Okay, so that's it. Any questions? Okay. Talk to me.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, so you have a summary of the cranial nerves. So very, very generally, please. So you're gonna have like few questions in your next quiz next Friday on cranial nerves. You have open book. You'll know where to look for the answers, I'm pretty sure, right? If you continue into this field, you're definitely gonna learn much, much, much more.